available. Hiring in the next.
So I'd like to call to order the Board of Trustees meeting for the Village of Riverwoods. The Board of Trustees is meeting virtually tonight under exceptions to the Open Meetings Act on the basis of Governor Pritzker's executive orders concerning the COVID emergency, and my determination as village president that it is not practical or prudent to meet in person at this time. Accordingly, this meeting is being conducted virtually with board members participating through the Zoom platform. One or more village officials are present at Village Hall during this meeting as required by the Open Meetings Act. Public comment may be mailed to the village at the web address shown on the agenda. We will not use the chat function because it is not captured on the audio for recording of this meeting. So with having said that, I am going to ask for the roll call, please.
Trustee Clayton,
Here.
Trustee Dickon,
Here.
Trustee Eastman,
Here.
Trustee Haber,
Here.
Trustee Hollander,
Here.
Trustee Jamerson,
Here.
President Ford.
Here,
We have a quorum.
thank you. The first order of business would be the approval of minutes, and we'll start with the approval of the appropriation hearing held on March 15th, 2022. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion on the appropriations hearing minutes? Seeing none and hearing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Clayton,
Aye.
Trustee Dickon,
Aye.
Trustee Eastman,
Aye.
Trustee Haber,
Aye.
Trustee Hollander,
Aye.
Trustee Jamerson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Next order of business is approval of the minutes of the March 15th, 2022 board meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion, comments? Hearing none and seeing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Clayton,
Aye.
Trustee Dickon,
Aye.
Trustee Eastman,
Aye.
Trustee Haber,
Aye.
Trustee Hollander,
Aye.
Trustee Jamerson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, motion approved. Next order of business, the approval of bills. Do I have a motion for the approval of bills, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, with that, are there any comments or questions on what you have seen in the council report? Trustee Jamerson, please.
Yeah, I'm curious as to why the bill, let's see, 855, the organic gardener, is under rain garden expense.
Well, you can blame me for that because I couldn't find a community garden. And
Okay.
I thought it had the word garden in it and it was close.
Oh,
If you'd like to recategorize that, I'd be happy to do it.
that's fine. I just got and Mayor, I just got a text from somebody that's waiting in the waiting room.
Oh, thank you very
Yeah.
much. And I just admitted her. Okay, are there any questions or comments? Further question, Trustee Clayton, please.
On page 3 of the council approval report, item number 225, there's a check for Miller Cooper. That's $3,446. I just wanted the board to be aware of what that was. As you know, Miller Cooper had some issues with its timeliness and its efficiency and effectiveness in the last audit, and some of the billing was unapproved. And at this point, they are not willing to release any of their working papers to Selden Fox until they get this $3,446 paid. unfortunately, if we didn't get the working papers from Miller Cooper, it would take about at least $10,000 to do this present audit in addition to the normal charges for the audit. So I guess we've made the decision to go ahead and pay Miller Cooper, but I wanted to make the board aware.
Thank you for that, because there was the opportunity for Miller Cooper to come before the board to protest the amount that I had calculated for their bill. In conversations with Trustee Clayton, as well as our team from Lauterbach and Amen, this was not an easy audit. There seemed to be some disorganization, a lot of repeat, and it went over a long period of time. I wrote a message, rather, an email, suggesting that it was not a smooth process and that we would share this overage that they tried to bill us, and said if you wanted to protest that, you could come to the board meeting back in November. I said that if you did not appear in front of the board, then this is the number that I'm going to pay you. And didn't hear anything. And so we sent them $30,000 at that point. And I heard in February that they wanted, they wanted us to pay the remainder of what they determined their bill should be, which is an additional $6,000. I repeated, you could certainly come and talk to the board about what you feel is fair, and got no response. And then we tried to begin our audit work with our new auditors. So this $3,000, this is a most unusual situation from what I understand. And I think the board, we wanted to make the board aware of this in a public meeting, simply because it was a very distasteful way to end a professional relationship. So with this $3,000, I think that's probably the end of being our relationship with Miller Cooper. And again, just a matter of making the board aware. So are there any questions? Trustee Jamerson, please.
I don't have a question on that. I would suggest that we don't have any future deals with them. But I have a question about the Village of Deerfield water purchase. As I don't know if the new board members know, but we only purchase Deerfield water if there's a reason why the Northbrook water is not flowing, because we pay less to Northbrook. And it's almost $8,500, which is a lot of water from Deerfield. So I don't know, does anybody know why that? Cassie does. Of course she does.
Yeah, our village engineer, Carissa, can speak to that.
So what we had to do is we had to do some maintenance on the reservoir, which means we had to drain the reservoir, and we had to tap into the Deerfield source in order to accommodate the capacity needed to keep the systems at full capacity. So that's just it's a one-time bill that just occurred because of the maintenance that needed to be done on the reservoir.
Right, and if I remember what Pat told me, Northbrook dumps water into the reservoir because we're not directly connected to them, but Deerfield we are directly connected to, so we don't have to get, so that's why, okay, thank you.
Right. No problem.
Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none and seeing no more. Roll call, please.
Trustee Clayton,
Aye.
Trustee Dickon,
Aye.
Trustee Eastman,
Aye.
Trustee Haber,
Aye.
Trustee Hollander,
Aye.
Trustee Jamerson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Next item of business, Finance Committee Treasurer's Report. Trustee Clayton, do you have anything for us this time?
No.
Okay. Moving on, the Director of Community Services Report. Russ?
Yes, I got an update on their hazardous tree. It's going great. They've done 67 homes so far. They have one left that has called in on the schedule. They will have that done this week. And then they've started working on our trees. So it'll take them about he said, to 2.5 weeks to get all of our village trees down. So they're moving along and it looks good. And I think we got Katie, who's got an update on our community garden.
Indeed, I do, Russ. I'm pleased to be serving as the community garden liaison this year. And we have 17 residents that have agreed to participate in tomorrow's lottery. We only have 12 spots, but those lucky residents will be announced tomorrow with Barb Schimberg. And we're continuing on the wonderful work that Sheila Hollander started. So we thank her dearly for her efforts.
Trustee Haber, do you have a question?
Yeah, if I recall, when we did this, we talked about if someone had a plot one year and tried to get in, but they would have priority the next time around. Are we somehow giving priority to people who have not had the ability to have a plot yet? Because that was something I think we discussed and wanted in the plan.
I did not see that in the record, and we can certainly take a look at that, but I thought it was,
I think you'll find it in there somewhere. I think we discussed that.
Last year.
oh, I'm sorry, Trustee Hollander.
That's true. What happened is if you didn't get a plot at the community garden, you had first choice of getting the plot the following year. And then the ones that were left would then go into a lottery for people who had it the prior year. And that was to make certain that everybody at least had a chance every 2 years. I do have a question though regarding the trees. Russ, when they take down the tree, do they remove it or just leave it on the next to the road?
They've been leaving them, and it's up to the people to disperse of them how they want to. And if they wanted to do it, they will take it away. And it's a slight fee. It's a very slight fee, but a lot of people have said they want them because they're going to cut them up for firewood or what. So it's been, I guess, a toss up. We've only had a few people that have called back complaining. Actually, I think I had 2 last week where they left the logs and they weren't sure. So I talked to the people. I called back up Lucas and his guys went out and picked up the trees for him. So we haven't had many, actually only 2 complaints so far out of the 67 that he's done. So.
Attorney Hoover.
Just wanted to follow up with about the hazardous tree. We've had great participation in the program from people signing up to have it done by Lucas. But we also have a number of people who have either been out of town during the winter, who've sort of left messages that they maybe will get to it in April. I don't know what the number is. I need to sit down with Russ. I know he's been putting it together on a schedule, but we will be following up with the residents who haven't taken their trees down yet. And we'll probably report to you at the next meeting on that, but right, Russ?
Yeah, I've talked with Kristen, and her and Todd, I think next week are going to go out and zoom around the village and see what's left and what has to be done. So I'll get some kind of numbers from her.
Yeah, I guess there are people who have had their own private or their own companies other than Lucas. Take the trees down. So we need to combine all of that information.
Right. That's what we don't have right now. So that's what we got to gather up.
Yeah. Did you have a question or something earlier? I'm sorry. Okay. All right. If there are no other questions about the community garden or the hazardous tree, do we have an update? I know I put it under the agenda under my comments, but as long as we're talking about community stuff, the cleanup day and the plant sale.
Oh, yes, I do have an update. So May 14th is indeed the date, and 10 to noon is village-wide cleanup. At 10:30 to 3:30, we're having the plant sale, and it'll be a wide selection of native choices. They are not taking credit cards at the plant sale, so please bring loads of cash or check. 11:30 to 1:30, we're having the resident barbecue, and we're having Josh's Catering. And at 1, we're going to have the Pat Glen Memorial Tree dedication. And I've got a few other surprises. I don't want to tell you everything, but the word hootenanny comes to mind. So be on the lookout.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments for our deputy clerk? Trustee Eastman.
I guess I had one. There was a little bit of confusing messaging. I think it was maybe online because my son and I actually we were interested in looking at the plant sale and what was available. I don't know if this was from last year, but so there actually is going to be a physical plant sale this year. Because when you look on the website, it still says, we'll ship them to you. And I was confused, kind of hearing different things from different people as to whether the plant sale would be physically taking place or people would be picking them up there like they used to.
If I may answer part of your question, we are currently in the midst of an online plant sale.
Okay, but I just don't want residents to be confused about that element, right?
So we have the online, and you can order now and have it delivered to your house, or you can come on May 14th and buy physical plants and take them to your residence.
Okay, maybe that was the part that was missing online, explaining that there were 2 options there.
Chairman Brightcroft, did you have a comment, I think, on that?
Yes, there are at least 2 different companies or nurseries that the plants are coming from. So there will be physical plants, first come, first served at the village hall.
That's great.
And I think we should note that Trustee Eastman has volunteered to take their beautiful red truck around the village and collect garbage.
There's plenty of it when you look from the winter. So yeah, it'll be the right time of year to do it.
And the truck will get a good outing. Trustee Dickon.
I have a quick question for Trustee Eastman. If you could clarify where specifically online you may have seen this information. I just did a search for just keywords plant sale on the website, and the only thing it's linking to is the recent version of the Village Voice. So
yeah, I'm trying to remember. We looked at it a couple days ago over the weekend. I'll email it to you when I
because the Village Voice says
when I see where it was, I'm certain it was from the website.
So the website does
from
have
RPC.
The version does have the Village Voice posted in PDF form, but I don't recall, Katie, I don't know if you recall having posted anything regarding to the plant sale on the website. I'm not pulling anything up in search.
No, let me go back and see if I can dig it up.
Okay.
I don't know off the top of my.
And you bring up a great point. We could add this to a recent news item and make sure that it's clear.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Are there any other comments or questions for the Director of Community Services? Okie dokie, moving on. Consultants reports. Village Attorney, please.
We've had a little bit of a success so far with Thornton's in getting some of the documentation we needed. CubeSmart very graciously reviewed all of the amendments to the reciprocal easement agreement. Their general counsel and I were in communication. They've approved them and they signed the document. So that was one of the major hurdles for Thornton's. They also completed their final plan submission to Lake County, and Carissa has it also. Gerald Hamilton has issued a review letter. I don't know, Carissa, if there's anything notable that you were planning to mention or you want to jump in now and mention about it, but basically they would like to get through all the necessary reviews. I don't know how long it will take for them to respond to the comments that we have. But they've started to talk to me about when we might be able to close on the sale of the land. So stay tuned for the next update on that.
Are there any questions? Anything else? Anything else this evening? Okay. All right. Village Engineers report.
Good evening.
Hi.
To To piggyback off of Bruce's comment about Thornton's, yes, we have turned around our review to Thornton's. I know they're really trying to push through to get going on that. The only thing they'll have to come back and get approval for is a variance for their comp storage. They need X amount from their 0 to 10 year and then X amount from their 10 to 100 year. Just due to the site restraints, they can't obtain their 0 to 10 year amount. So they want to compensate it with their 10 to 100 because they have plenty of room for that. So that'll probably come down the chute of the request for a variance to that. But in previous discussions, when Pat was going through the review, he did note that it was a possibility to get the variance. So that's the only thing that's really kind of outstanding with their current plans. Also, they'll need IDOT and county approval since they're adjacent to both their jurisdictions. So that's the Thornton review. Today also we met with Lake County Public Works. They're doing a new force main down Saunders and a new lift station. So therefore we met to go over preliminary plans, myself and Mike Grinnell, to discuss logistics of the whole plan and try to see if there's any major red flags with they're currently proposing. We didn't see any major issues. There's still some things to tweak here and there. And so they're going to use that going forward into final design. And then going into bidding, and Mayor, I know you have this on your list as well, but I figured to touch on the pass at the Village Hall. We are going to put together a bid package this week, and we potentially could turn around and go into bid the following week and then open by the end of the month. And I don't know about having it done in time for the cleanup day, but we'll try our hardest to try to get to schedule around it. Obviously, we don't want to have a huge construction site going on while we're enjoying a nice, hopefully summer day outside on fall or in spring cleanup. And then with that, operations, they're still trying to finish up the meters. As has been alluded to, there are a handful of residents that, you know, are slowly coming back from Florida or other states. So hopefully we can capture those residents to finish up the meter install. And then also, we're going to start going forward with this year's road program. Typically, last couple of years, I've seen that it's been done in the fall. I know there's some concerns about the pathways. So therefore, in the next week or so, I think that we'll reach out and start doing observations on the path, calling out areas that need to be addressed, start putting bid books together to get going on that and pushing the road program earlier to encapsulate the pathways than having it in the fall like it's done the last couple of years. And with that, I think that concludes my report.
Trustee Jamerson.
Carissa, I just want to make sure that we had a discussion, the board had a discussion last year about SSAs tagging on to the road program and creating an issue with us not being able to use MFT funds for that, for our road programs, because we were saving the SSA's money. And I think we need to make sure that, you know, that that we talk about that before we lump that all together again. And I know that Mayor Ford just gave me a kind of a what look, but we did talk about that because, you know, I was under the impression that the MFT funds were paying for things that they weren't, because we had lumped in the private road associations, the SSA funds. So I just want to make sure that, and if I'm remembering that wrong, some of the other trustees, please hop on. I see Bruce has got his finger up. It's not a bad finger, but
Attorney Hoover.
If I'm getting this correctly, I think what happens is that, and what we've tried to do in the past, is have the SSAs bid with the MFT road work at the same time, because we get a better price for everyone. Oftentimes, in a number of years, the SSA projects have been larger than the MFT projects, and so the village has really benefited from the economy of scale. But I don't, you know, we can't use MFT funds on SSA projects, so we're not. I've never seen an example where we're, you know, cross-mixing the money. So I'm not, unless I'm missing what you're trying to get at.
well, what I'm saying is that when we could have used MFT funds, even if it would have been more expensive for the village, it would have been MFT funds that we get from the state instead of coming out of our coffers. And that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that we were mixing funds one way or the other, because we weren't. I know that we've been doing it separately, but when we create one bid package for the economy of scale, we can't use MFT funds, even though we segregate the billing to the SSAs. That's what I'm saying. And we did talk about this, and I don't know that we ever came to a final conclusion, but anyways, that's.
Okay, well, maybe what we should do is look at how we do the contracting, because we do it as a convenience, as a single contract. There's no reason why we couldn't do it as two contracts and still through the bidding process have the uniform pricing. So that's a good thing to keep in mind.
Yeah. Trustee Haber, please. You're muted.
Two comments. One, on the issue of the MFT funds, I think that's a really good point by Trustee Jamerson, but if the MFT funds are going to be used regardless on other projects, then I guess it's less significant. In other words, if we don't have excess MFT funds and we're going to use them up regardless, then it probably doesn't matter. Then we get the benefit of both. We get the benefit of using the MFT and we get the benefit of the better pricing. So that would be comment one. So I'm not sure where that lies, but I guess we have to look at that too. And then secondly, for Clarissa, I'm just wondering, the Saunders Road forced sewer, main sewer, how is that going to impact the road on Saunders?
They're actually going into final design. They're anticipating to start construction around spring 2023. And they're going to probably do a multi-phase project just because of cost, but they're going to be done by 2025. And the current STP cycle that Saunders Road is under, the earliest we'd receive funding and are starting construction will be 2025. So they should be all wrapped up and completed prior to us starting our roadway program with STP funds.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions for our village engineer?
Can I ask Bruce one question?
Sure.
You're working on the Thorntons, and I see the engineers got reviews, and we had our wetlands guy got reviews. I have not seen any building stuff, but I got to get that and any building permit. So they filed no permits, and we've got no building stuff, but I got to get those. But I need the permits so we can go ahead and put together a file so we can keep track of all this stuff. Because right now there's things flying around piecemeal, and I don't have the system in place to go ahead and keep track of all of it yet.
Duly noted. We'll get all that to you.
Okay.
Just came in.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there anything else?
That's it.
Okay, moving on. Plan Commission report.
Plan Commission is not meeting in April. We're in a lull period, waiting for Lexington Homes to come back to us and hopefully something involving the 37 acres. So it's been quiet, but I'm sure it will not be in the near future.
Are there any questions for our Plan Commission? Okay, moving on. Zoning Board of Appeals, Chairman Gratiter.
ZBA has not met in a very long time, and I see nothing coming up in the immediate future.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
Good.
It's good. Okay. Moving on then, next item on the agenda is the police report. Chief?
The police activity is in the board packet. Do want to let the board know that we did receive our credit cards for mobile for the police cars, and
Sure.
we've been purchasing most of our fuel at Mobile now, Riverwoods Mobile. One thing of note, on March 25th, at about 2:45, many of you might have heard about a large police presence in actually Deerfield at Wilmot and Deerfield Road in that area. And our officers did respond. I bring this up only because the mayor was out for a ride along that night and or that afternoon, and she responded as well. So it was just east of the tollway, and our officers helped apprehend multiple occupants of a stolen car that crashed and hit a pole after a Northbrook squad car attempted to stop it. So 5 people ran and we caught 4 of them. That's all I have.
It was a wild ride. You know, for those of you who've never gotten to ride in a police car with the lights going and the siren on, weaving in and out of traffic, our officers are the best. You know, pulls up, jumps out of the car, just, you know, and I'm thinking, I'm locking the doors. But it was quite exciting, but it was very interesting to see how promptly and quickly everybody responded. And what I found particularly interesting is that when you sit in the police car and the officer is driving, he's also got a computer right here, and he can see all the cars in the area, and he can hear all of that stuff. So he's got communication coming through his walkie-talkie. He's got the computer, the little laptop right next to him, so he's seeing all that. And yet it was a safe ride. If all of our officers respond just as well as, I can't pronounce Jared's last name, Officer Jared, we've got a great force. We've got a great force, and y'all should know that. It was interesting to see how many people, again, you know, unmarked cars, everything. It was, you know, guns drawn, the whole 9 yards. It was great, but our guys are the best. And then I think he got yelled at too when he asked you if you would come and get me.
I said, she's where?
So it was quite an afternoon. It was quite an afternoon.
How were the
But-
donuts?
Did not.
Did he say how we doing?
Yeah, no, this guy, he's on it.
Yeah, from the police trust.
He was on it. He was on it. He was totally, no. Jared in particular is on a terrific diet. That man has lost like 100 pounds. So no donuts for Jared. Anyway, we should be very proud of our force.
It was also a good example of mutual aid, because there were cars there from Deerfield, Highland Park, Riverwoods, Northbrook, and
Lake Forest.
and Lake Forest. And I think Wheeling had brought a dog out also. So in addition
Yeah.
to Northbrook, so it was quite a response, because you had 5 people, you know, who were out running through the neighborhoods. And that's all I have.
I think that's probably enough, don't you?
And it's Officer Tinnitus, by the way. That's how you pronounce it.
Oh, tinnitus, yeah,
Like the ear thing.
but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, are there any questions for our chief? Okay, now it's my turn. And tonight we've brought back to you the donation to the Deerfield Parent Network, the after party. And we have at our meeting tonight, we've got Jen Dubinsky. In your packet, you have the application and some financial information that I think we were missing maybe the first time around. So if the board would like, I can ask Jen to go over the application a bit, and perhaps just a little background on the Deerfield Parent Network and what they're doing. So Jen, if you'd like to address the board, please.
So thanks for having me tonight, and thanks for being just awesome stewards of your community. This has been really informative. I found out that on the May 14th, I want to buy native plants if I'm allowed to, coming from Deerfield. And I found out more about the police chase nearby my house. So this has been really informative. But so I'm here representing the Deerfield Parent Network's after prom party. And this is an event that we've been holding for 15 years now, and you all have been, those of you that are longtime board members, you know that you've been gracious enough to donate to for as long as I have known. What After Prom is that Deerfield High School, they take a bus from the SAC Center over on Lake Cook Road. They take a bus, the kids take a bus to prom from the SAC Center downtown, and then they get bused back to the SAC Center, whereupon we capture those kids essentially in a nice way. And we keep them at the SAC Center until about 3 in the morning with a variable of like music and so much donated food and prizes. App donates like big screen TVs for us to raffle off, and we have all sorts of community donations that make this really the place to be for after prom. And even kids that don't go to prom, they still come to after prom. So out of the graduating class, we generally have 99% of the kids. This is their last hurrah together, and this is for all of Deerfield High School. And it is really the premier event within the North Shore. Highland Park has tried to replicate it. All sorts of different towns have tried to replicate what we've gotten going. And it's really thanks to donations from different community organizations and different community members. We are 100% donation based. We do work on a reserve, which I think was part of the question beforehand. Why are we fundraising if we have a reserve? But in the paperwork that I submitted to you in that email, you'll see that we work on the reserve because of the perfect example is last year. Last year we were in a pandemic, kids were remote up until about, I don't know, March maybe. In March, the school administration came to us and said, we want to do after prom. Well, in order to get after prom together for May, we needed a reserve to work upon. Otherwise, there's no way we could have put money out for the entertainment companies or to front some of the events that we did, only to recoup the costs within our fundraising. So I will open the floor to questions. If you have any questions of me, I'm more than happy to answer it. We have a big group of volunteers that do this, and since it's a high school event, every couple of years the volunteers turn over, and so sometimes things don't get filled out in the fullness and richness of information that you need the first time. So I'm here to personally help answer any questions. And my dog is slamming the door trying to get in.
Are there any questions from our trustees? Trustee Haber.
I just have some comments because I've been on the board probably the longest, and I remember the first time this came up before the board. And if my recollection serves me correct, the Deerfield Parent Network tried to replicate what had been going on in Glenbrook. I think it was Glenbrook North or Glenbrook South, I don't really recall, or maybe the combination of both, where they had this amazing after prom situation, which was designed to protect the kids from themselves, basically. And I was always a big supporter of it. My wife was on the Parent Network, and I think she was probably there when this originally came up. So I would encourage the board to seriously consider the continuation of this donation.
Trustee Jamerson.
Do you have, and I don't have kids that go to Deerfield High School. I grew up in Northbrook. My kids grew up in Northbrook. But do all the kids that go to prom go to after prom, or everyone who goes to prom goes to after prom?
So everybody who goes to prom goes to after prom by choice too. It's not that we're forcing them to do it at all. This is the party to be at, it's actually, I didn't grow up in Deerfield. I'm from Indiana. So I think that this is like, it's so cool. And I'm so excited that next year, so I don't even have a senior, I have a junior. So next year, my son is going to be able to do something like this. All the kids do go. And even the kids that don't go to prom, or the kids, that they either didn't have a date or whatever, they didn't want to go to prom, they can still join in. And it's a locked in function. So you cannot leave. Once you're there, you're there. And we have bag check during the day where they drop off their bags to change into. And but yeah, everybody goes, and it is really truly a class building experience. It's like nothing I've ever seen.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. And if you want to be up at 2 a.m, you can come.
Sorry, not interested.
Trustee
Been there,
Dickon,
been there, done that.
trustee Dickon.
Yes, I read the history of how this event had actually started, that it began to take place after a tragic accident. And I think it's wonderful that you guys have come around to do this. I've got 3 kids and one's going to be going into Deerfield High School in a year. But I do have a couple questions. As you know, Riverwoods is small. We've got only 4,000 people. And we're split between Deerfield High School and Stevenson. So just proportionally speaking, I know you might not have the exact data, how many Riverwoods kids are actually going to be part of the celebration?
Oh, I don't really know that. Sorry. That would be more of a school district question. I don't really know how many kids, but no, I'm sorry. I can't even guess to that. I have no idea how many kids are from Riverwoods.
Okay.
Do you have an idea how many kids participate altogether?
Yeah, so this class is actually the biggest class at Deerfield High School. It's 421 kids, and we're anticipating 421 plus the extras, because kids from other schools can come if they're a date of a Deerfield High School student. So, yeah.
Okay.
Trustee Hollander.
Just to give a little background for Trustee Dinkins' comment about the Riverwoods kids, the child which was killed and that prompted this was a Riverwoods resident. Turned out to be my nephew. So they were from Riverwoods.
Was Michelle Richter your daughter?
Yes, that's my daughter.
I love Michelle. Her son is a friend of my son.
Yeah, and the boy who was killed was Jesse Trace.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Are there any questions? Are there any other comments? Would a trustee like to make a motion to approve a donation of $1,000?
So move.
I'll second that.
Okay, are there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Trustee Eastman, Trustee Haber,
Aye.
Trustee Hollander,
Aye.
Trustee Jamerson,
Aye.
Trustee Clayton,
Aye.
Trustee Dickon.
Aye.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And
Thank you so much. We
and
really
good luck.
appreciate it.
Good luck and good work.
Thanks. And if anybody, seriously, if you want to see it, feel free to come by the SAC Center May 24th from midnight to 3.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that for a while.
Down.
Not on purpose.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you for appearing before the board. We appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay, next item is just a general short discussion I'd like to have with the board. We receive requests from time to time about displaying support for one cause or the other at Village Hall. For example, the last one I believe was Pause for Patrick. It was supporting mental illness, and they'd like us to put out green ribbons and those kinds of things. So every month not every month, but it's frequently there are times when we've been asked to show public support for one issue or the next at Village Hall. And I just want to get a feeling for the preference of the board. What we have done is assume that it's a public place and not everybody would agree with every particular support. So in the way of making everyone feel welcome, or that this particular village takes one point of view or another, we haven't done anything. I didn't know if that was the wish of this board. And seeing as this has come up, I would like to just have a short, brief discussion and get a feeling for the board, what guidance the board might like to give on that. Trustee Hollander.
Our lack of ability to independently review the organization that's making the request means that we would have to probably treat everybody the same and accept them all or deny them all. My recommendation is, because we can't look at them independently and make some judgment, which is going to be questioned by someone, that we don't take a position.
Trustee Eastman.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with what Henry says. I mean, unfortunately, it's like you would like to be able to support certain of these things, but it's how do you draw that line, right? I mean, it's a slippery slope once you, even if you did have the ability to assess it, he's right that there's always going to be someone that's going to have a differing opinion. So while it feels somewhat uncomfortable, I think the only way to do it is to do it the same way that we have.
Anyone else wishing to express an opinion? With that, I think we'll just continue to wish everyone well and not make a public display at Village Hall. Okay, thank you. The last item under my comments are the bids for the paths around Village Hall, the campus here, and the demonstration center. Our village engineer touched on that. Walking the paths as they exist around Village Hall is borders on dangerous. We have two different kinds of paths. One is a fibrous wood chip path, and the other is porous crushed granite. And the crushed granite are the great paths that you will see that go from the parking lot to Village Hall and around the back of the building. Most of the pathways are this chipped wood, and walking the paths today, after a couple years, they are scattered, they're porous, and so they're soggy, and really it's difficult to imagine anybody wanting to walk back in there. We do see people walking back in there from time to time, but they're just in not a good condition. And if we have less able guests, they would not be able to walk on that. Somebody who is older would not be able to safely walk on that. People who are pushing strollers, wheelchairs, it's a non-starter with the condition of those paths. The ones to the west of the Village Hall are particularly difficult. We have another wood fibrous chip path next to the shelter, which is a bit better, but nevertheless not well defined and not well maintained. The other pathway I would like to talk about and bring to the board at another date is the demonstration center. There is no good way to get to the demonstration center from a parked car. If you want to visit the demonstration center and drive there, you need to park in the police department, walk out of the police department's parking lot, down the sidewalk, and then there's another crushed stone path there. There is no, if you are less able, that's a longer walk. If you are in a wheelchair or if you're pushing a stroller, again, it's not easily done. And I'll suggest to you that the demonstration center could be better used if we had parking access. And there really is no good place to park other than the police station. So what I was planning to do is asking the village engineer to give us a cost estimate, what it would take to replace the paths, the fibrous wood paths, excuse me a minute. Replace the fibrous wood paths with the crushed granite. With the crushed granite. Sorry, Chief, it really is just dry throat here. Replace those with the crushed granite, refresh the crushed granite, and then install a path from the parking lot to the demonstration center. I'd like to bring those estimates back to the board for consideration to move forward with that. Again, I'm just looking for a little response on behalf of the board on that topic. Trustee Haber.
So I'm all in favor of making sure that our paths are safe. That being said, I'm getting really frustrated by the fact that we are even talking about fixing the paths at the campus and talking about putting in potentially later, we'll have a discussion about a new playground at the campus, when we are not able to take care of the existing paths in our village, which are used by our residents regularly. We have walking paths all on Deerfield Road, on Riverwoods Road, that are in deplorable condition, absolutely deplorable. We have made tiny little incremental repairs. I walked them again this last weekend. They are extremely dangerous. There are gaps that are unbelievably wide. If someone rides a bike there and a tire goes in one of those gaps, they are falling for sure. They're so unsightly. And I'm not in favor of doing anything on any other path or any other recreational facility or any more infrastructure until we take care of what our existing infrastructure is. We can't do more until we can show that we can take care of what we already have. And this has been a condition that's been in existence for many years now. And we've ignored it. We've put Band-Aids on it. And we try and promote the village. We want to brand the village. We want to put new signs in the village. We want to do all these things to bring people into this village because it's such a great place. But the one thing that people use, our walking paths, are deplorable. And I don't get it. And I don't know why we're not addressing it.
Trustee Jamerson.
I hear you, Trustee Haber, and I understand and I agree that paths that people use should be maintained. I would say that the county has been telling us for 4 years that they're going to put a path along Deerfield Road. And it's probably one of the reasons why that particular path we haven't spent a lot of money on it, because we don't want to spend money on it to have it torn up. The path along Riverwoods Road probably should be looked at and rebuilt if that's what it takes. I will tell you that there are people by you and close to those paths that use those paths. There's people in the rest of Riverwoods that don't use those paths. So, and that's going to be probably a discussion that's going to come up next about who uses what in the village. But yes, we should have safe paths. There's no question about that. It's not going to be cheap. I believe that if we wanted to, that's probably something we could, I don't know this for a fact. Carissa can tell us for sure if that's an MFT fund thing or not. I don't know if it is. But I'm all for getting bids to redo the path along Riverwoods Road 100%. If that's, I don't see that's an issue. I do see people using that path. I don't see tons of people, but I don't drive down Riverwoods Road all that much. So your point is well taken.
Absolutely. Trustee Clayton. You're muted.
Can't hear you.
Better?
Better.
Sorry. I agree with Trustee Haber as well. I think that the Riverwoods Road path should definitely be considered. My question would be whether Trustee Haber believes that we should go ahead and spend a fair amount of money on the Deerfield Road path in advance of the county project. And if so, then maybe we should seriously consider going forward with that as well, seeing as how the county project has been delayed over several years. I would also note that in the capital plan, we had set aside, I think it's off the top of my head, around $220,000 this year for pathway work. So I think that anticipated some of the work that Trustee Haber just mentioned. So I think my recommendation would be we should go ahead and get bids for the Riverwoods Road path for sure, and then decide whether we want to do the Deerfield Road path in advance of the county work.
Trustee Hollander.
Just to answer the question, the MFT funds, I just looked it up, can be used for quote sidewalks and pedestrian paths, both construction and maintenance. It's
This is sort of opportunity back and forth. I think somebody mentioned this earlier, but we had been saving all of the MFT funds for Saunders Road. So to the extent to which we use them for Saunders Road, then we can't use them for the pathways. So whatever.
But if we're not doing Saunders Road for
Right.
4
That's
more
the point.
years,
We should be able to do that too.
Attorney Huvard, could I have, you've had your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to give the board the context. The policy decision that the board has been making is not that they wanted the path to be unsafe, but that as a policy, at least up to this point, it didn't make financial sense. It wasn't feasible to repair the path for a 2 or 3 year repair before the county came back. There is an understanding in the law that when the board makes a policy decision like that, the village isn't negligent in the same way that when it just doesn't do the day-to-day maintenance that it's set out to do for a given path system. The corollary to that is that we have to decide what to do about people even accessing the path. And I know we've had discussions before, used to have them with Pat, getting the type of workforce out there that you would need for that path is very difficult because it's substandard, it's narrow, it's almost a hand job to go in and do all the kind of little patching. We talked at one time about just taking the path out rather than reinstalling one. And that too was an expensive project. We talked about putting signs up prohibiting any kind of rolled vehicle or anything with wheels. It's a tricky thing, and I'm not saying I have the answer. Maybe Carissa has something to add about this, but the fact that we have a reasonable policy basis not to repair the road for a couple of years is not the same as we still need to do something so someone doesn't injure themselves because we know someone may still go on the road. So we still have to think of what to do. And even the short-term repairs may be quite costly from what I remember the last time we looked at it.
Trustee Haber.
So the problem I have, and the reason why I'm the most vocal about this, is because this is something that we have been discussing for years and been talking about, you know, we can't do anything because, you know, because Deerfield Road is going to be expanded and the county's going to do this. But at the same time, it's an embarrassment for the village. And I would encourage everyone on the board to walk on the path on Deerfield Road from Saunders to Port Wine. And I would just, I'm certain that if you did that, you would all be of the opinion that something has to be done. And if it means tearing the path out and just having a dirt path, it would be significantly better than what is currently there. And part of the reason why the path is so narrow is because we've allowed the growth on both sides of the path to completely take it over. You know, it's like Chernobyl after all these years, you know, the woods take over and they've enveloped the entire, you know, all the buildings. It's the same thing. Our path almost doesn't even exist anymore. In some places, it is so narrow, but every time that I walk the path, and I don't say I walk it all the time, but I'm always passing people on that path. There's not one time when I don't pass people on the path. I don't know if they're coming from North Riverwoods or South Riverwoods or coming from Deerfield, but it's something that we are using, that the people in the village are using. There are so many instances when we have put things together where we question whether the people in the village are using it. Here we know that they're using it. So I say either we close the path, if that has to be done, we remove the path, that's fine, or we fix it and do a nice job and make it something that we are proud of, even if it means it's going to be for 3 or 4 years. Let's be proud of the path.
Trustee Eastman.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add real quickly, I have biked with my family, both of those paths, and, I would say, clearly Deerfield Road one is in worse shape than even Riverwoods Road, with the exception of the section from Port Wine to the Des Plaines River Trail. That's fine. It's the rest of it that is the really bad part when you cross the street. And I would also add that, on Riverwoods Road, there's a real juxtaposition there now that Lincolnshire has redone their paths, right? It's like you drop off from Lincolnshire looking brand spanking new to our overgrown paths, right? And it's, I think that development in the past year or two makes it even a little bit more stark. I do agree with I do think about the financial considerations of, maybe the halfway way to do it is to turn it into a dirt path as opposed to, redoing the pavement and that stuff. If we think that the Deerfield project, will be done in a couple of years, maybe that's something to explore, but I agree that something does need to be done, and it probably is a higher priority than the paths around the village hall in terms of who utilizes them. And given that it's also bicycles and mixed modes of transportation.
Our village engineer, Carissa, please, Smith.
So what we can do is we can put together a cost estimate to redo the paths. Like I said, we were going to walk and do an analysis on the pathways as part of the road programs, kind of split half patching of roadways, and then there's a portion for the paths. I think per previous discussions, we were going to kind of flip that allocation to concentrate more on the paths. But what we can do is go out there and do an analysis and kind of do a tiered approach. Is if we wanted to fix it all, here's what the potential cost is, just to get an idea. If we want to take a portion, I'm not saying turn it to dirt, because I think that will kind of deter away of really what the purpose of what I'm hearing a lot of people want. You can turn it into more of your limestone screen, what you see at your forest reserve, something that's not as costly as pavement, but is an option that you can still ride a bike on, you can still push a stroller on. If someone's running, you can still run on that material, and it's not really a hazard. And then also we could look at the cost of just removing it and see how that is. But that's something we could facilitate. Obviously hearing a lot of concerns to get a figure in front of the board here, so then everyone can kind of make a sound decision of really on the cost estimate, where do we want to go with the allocations of it, to get someone out there, because it is going to be labor extensive in some areas, because right, you can't really bring a machine, you can't back up your typical semi, you can't bring in your typical asphalt machine to lay it. It's going to be, some wheelbarrows, some hand tampering, and at that point you really get that smooth surface as if you were actually going to apply it with an asphalt machine. So therefore, maybe in those areas we look at the more crushed limestone, that application, especially on Deerfield, because then that doesn't seem like, okay, we just spent all this pavement and they're going to be ripping it up. At least now it's material that, they kind of rip it up. It's not so cost prohibitive. So if it's something that we want to move forward with, we can definitely put something together to inform the board cost wise, where we kind of go with the tiers, so everyone can feel comfortable knowing that this is the decision that the board wants to go ahead with, and then we can move forward with going out to bids and getting it addressed.
Trustee Jamerson.
I would just suggest that you talk to, when you keep in mind that, this is more like a golf cart path in construction. And there are companies that's all they do is golf cart paths, as opposed to, a typical paving company that wants to back their dump truck up to the paver. So it would probably be less expensive for them because they have the smaller equipment to do that. So just point of
it. What I'm hearing from the board generally is that a path package would be something that the board would like to consider. The path package would include the current walking paths on Deerfield as well as Riverwoods Road, the paths around the village hall, and the demonstration center. So if we could get a path package together and in front of you, that might give us something that we can sink our teeth in and make decisions on.
with breakout costs. They should be.
I'm sorry, say again?
the cost should be broken out between.
Yes,
the different
absolutely.
paths.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing I heard was that if we ripped out the paved path or the blacktop path that exists on Deerfield Road and Riverwoods Road, perhaps something we could consider is the same crushed porous granite that we have around Village Hall, which seems to wear pretty well and to be able to accommodate different forms of like either a bike or walking and all of that, and not be as costly to maintain. Trustee Jamerson.
The only comment I would make about that is if we're gonna plow the paths, that's gonna probably be
Yeah,
harder
that's not-
harder
yeah.
to do.
No, yeah, correct. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So a path package. We'll work with the village engineer on that and bring something back to the board for your consideration. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. I'm
Thanks.
seeing nodding, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna miss this view when we're in person, because I can see you and I can see when this is going on, that kind of stuff. Okay, moving on. Next item of business are visitors wishing to address the board. First thing I would do is to ask Chief if we had any emails.
Oh, I
Oh,
actually
Katie,
handled
Katie,
that
I'm
now.
sorry.
And we did not have any email.
I would report to you that I had 2 emails addressed to me and one was addressed to the board. And they both had to do with the playground and both were in opposition to the playground. Should I read those? I should read those, shouldn't I?
Well, you might want to take the comments on the subject that's on the agenda after the board or, at some point during the board's
point.
discussion.
Good point. I will bring those up during the new business item. Are there visitors wishing to address the board on anything else other than what is currently on the agenda? Okay, seeing none and we don't have any other emails. New business. First item there is the reconsideration of the play area concept for the village campus. As your packet has in it a memo that was written to give you kind of a feel and provide a little background with respect to the play area. And the issue before the board is whether or not it wishes to reconsider its decision of March of 2020 to exclude a play area from the campus. And that's the biggest one. Excuse me, but we cannot have any chats because they are not recorded in the meeting. So when we are coming to this discussion, we'll ask if there are anybody willing to address the board on that item after the trustees have had their discussion. So rather than read the memo for everyone, the issues in front of the board are, frankly, it starts with whether or not we move forward with a play area on the village campus. So I'm going to throw it open for discussion with the board. There was a committee formed and we started looking at this issue and we've come to a point where the next movement would require action on the part of the board for either approval of an expenditure or contracting a professional. So, but we cannot go forward if the board doesn't wish to reconsider play area. So Trustee Jamerson.
The new trustees probably don't know this, but the old trustees do. I was a proponent of this during the original campus plan. And I believe that in the last 2 years during COVID, especially, there have been a lot of turnovers of homes in Riverwoods, a lot of new families with young kids who are not going to school yet. I think we're talking about paths that some people in the village use. We talked about the the community garden that 12 people in the village use, that we spent funds on. And I realized that a play area is going to cost a lot more than the community garden did, but it's going to cost a heck of a lot less than the paths. We just gave the high school $1,000, which I think is well used. And I'm not arguing that point, but my guess is out of those 430 some students, the number of students from Riverwoods is probably a tenth of that. So, you know, I think that we as a governmental body have to consider the entire citizenship, not just the people that only want Riverwoods to stay segregated is not the right word. The way it is and the way it's been. There's new people moving in that are looking for amenities that we don't have. I think that people that the people in Riverwoods are getting older, especially the ones that have had houses for a long time. They're going to be looking for people to buy those houses. The people that are going to be buying those houses are going to be looking for things we do not have. Some of them are walking paths for sure. Some of them are play lots. Some of them are things we don't even know they may want. And I think that we really need to take a serious look at this. We had the option when we went for that grant to have the state pay for half of this, and the board said no. So I'm obviously still a proponent of this. I think it's something that will benefit people in the village, and the arguments that were made last time about going to Deerfield or going to Buffalo Grove or going to Wheeling are hollow. You're going to have to drive to this one. You're going to have to drive to those two. They don't know people over there. This is a place for our village to come together and meet people. And I think that it's something that we should have. We built that, you know, it was part of that original plan. So it's my 2 cents for now.
Trustee Hollander.
I want to just take exception on maybe my memory is different. The reason the play area was removed when the campus plan came in was not because we didn't want it, was because we had maxed out our matching dollar amount. And we had spent every dollar we could match, was my impression. And this would have been fully paid for by us. It wasn't going to be matched at that time.
No,
and that was the reason it was pulled out. So my memory was that. Either way, I still think that that should not be a reason to not do the play area.
Trustee Eastman, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I would basically second everything that Rick said. I mean, you've got, you know, turnover, and you have more and more. I see even on my street on Sherry Lane, we just had new people that moved in, and even in the, you know, 6 years that I've been here, I've seen more and more kids replace older families. So it's something that I think if it's done in a modest and fiscally responsible way, I think everyone benefits. I think the older village residents may benefit in what they get for their property when they sell it, right? I mean, I think it's probably a thing that, you know, kind of like when we talk about village water, right? It's a few of these things where we say, okay, you know, maybe now is the time to, you know, upgrade our village in that way.
Are there any other trustees that want to speak on this issue? Trustee Dickon.
I'll chime in. You know, as a mom of 3 and as a very active outdoors person, I certainly appreciate the fact that someone's putting this concept out there and that this is open for discussion. With that said, I want to make sure that if an expense of this scale is endured, that we consider the cost of maintenance and that it indeed actually represents the wishes of the majority of the residents in Riverwoods. So from what I understand, there's a petition going on in support of this, but if I may suggest, rather than having a petition in support of this, take a survey and actually get a broader scope of how many people actually want this and how many people are actually willing to make the trip. You know, there's a certain level of inconvenience. It's actually, it's an effort, right? Especially for those of us who are in the northern part of Riverwoods, it's an effort to, you know, get 3 kids in the car and drive out to the Village Hall, park, and then get out to play. There isn't a bike path, there isn't a walking path. So there's a lot of these ifs, and how many will actually this project benefit? So those are questions that I'd like to raise. And, you know, if the majority of the village actually sees this as something that they want, then I think we should move forward. But let's make sure that the majority actually has a say in this.
Okay, trustee Jamerson, then trustee Haber.
Trustee Dickon, I don't have an issue with asking the village what they want. I do have an issue with saying a majority. If you ask the majority of the village if they want us to repave those paths along Riverwoods, and I bet that people don't even know they're there. The people in Thorngate probably have no idea those paths are there and they never use them. So to ask for a majority from a governmental body is probably the wrong thing. Will people use it? I mean, do you get in your car now? Can you walk to a park now where you are?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, well, for a lot of people, they can't in Riverwoods, so they'd have to get in their car anyways to get to any park, whether it's the one in Deerfield or Buffalo Grove. So just my comments on your comments. The majority thing bothers me because I don't think that a village should cater to only the majority opinion.
Trustee Haber.
So I agree with Rick that we can't cater to majorities, although I think it's important to know what the majority wants. You know, at least so we have a feel, maybe not the majority, but what 30% of the village wants, or 20%, or some percentage, so that we know there's a demand. Secondly, I think the comparison, though, regarding like the paths is really misplaced, because one issue is a safety issue on an existing infrastructure, as opposed to now deciding whether or not we want something new. So I made my comments earlier. I could be in support of a playground if I think that the village is going to use it, you know, if there's going to be at least some percentage of the village that's going to use it. But I think it has to be with an understanding that we are definitely going to take care of that which we already have before we start putting in new obligations. So that would be my second comment. And then my third comment is that, and I don't know the answer to this question, but, you know, we have a playground in the village. It's in Thorngate. And I saw some comments when I looked at the petition. Some people made comments on that website, and they said, you know, we don't have a playground in the village. You can't use Thorngate. Well, that's not my understanding. My understanding is that the Thorngate play area is actually open to all residents in the village. Maybe I'm wrong. I know that I have a grandchild, and my wife drives to Thorngate and uses that little play area with our granddaughter. Maybe she's violating some homeowners association rule. I don't know. But I wonder, number one, whether other residents in the village have the right to use that, and whether that's been something that's known by the other residents in the village, and whether that would be something that the other residents in the village would use, and or if it's not, whether some arrangement could be made to use that because it already exists. It would be interesting to know. I mean, you have to drive to both. You know, we've talked about having walking paths along Port Wine so that you could potentially, you know, get to this campus. I don't think that that's going to be reasonably feasible in the near future, maybe ever, given the nature of what Port Wine is. So you've got to drive to any one of these anyhow. If the concept is if you have it at the campus plan, it's more of a community thing. It's part of the village hall. It's the walking paths. It's a combination of all these other things. I get that, and that makes some sense, as opposed to going to Thorngate and all there is just a playground. But I think there's a lot more investigation that needs before we just start to say we're going to spend, I don't know, I've heard numbers thrown around, a couple $100,000. You know, that's a significant chunk of dough with an ongoing expense. And I for one, just want to make sure that this is something that we really want to do.
I can answer the question about Thorngate. I did, earlier today, I sent a message to Catherine Romanelli, who was the prior president of the HOA. And Catherine said, yes, the playground is for Thorngate residents only.
And is that in the PUD, Bruce?
When they asked for approval of the playground, that was just part of their common area. So the village doesn't have a right to use parts of the common area in Thorngate anyway. So they never changed that just to get approval of the playground.
So that was.
So I would assume that it's part of their private community area.
I better tell my wife.
Well, you probably shouldn't have said it at a public meeting. Are there any other comments from board members? Trustee Clayton.
I'm obviously a proponent because I've been petitioning for this for a long time. I would just say the other day I went back and kind of looked at our records and how we've reached out to the community on this before. We've had 2 town hall meetings. We've had a paper survey. We've had an electronic survey. We've had a petition and now another one. It's been on the board agenda several times. We've asked for responses to the Village Voice articles. We had a village mailing on the subject and so on. And I think when all is said and done, we had a disagreement about what all the data that we had meant. And it seemed like there were some people who were very opposed and some people who were very pro and a whole lot of people in the middle. I think some things have changed a little bit since then. I do think that we've had a significant turnover in our community. I know on our block, the school bus now makes 6 stops when it didn't stop at all before. I think that, so I do think we have an influx of younger kids. And I would also say that at least my own personal objective or what I was trying to promote as an objective going forward was that this play area in the campus itself was kind of a reflection of the community's brand. And it was to promote community health, and it had a distinct atmosphere about it that was going to draw kids into the woodlands and to play and to become familiar with what it's like to be in the woods. So I'm in favor of at least considering our options at this particular point and bringing it before the board.
Are there other board members who wish to make their opinions known? Trustee Dickon, no. I think your square lit up and I thought maybe you'd want to add something. Okay, at this point, we can invite residents to comment. If you choose to comment, please turn on your video and certainly turn on your audio. And if you raise your hand, I will call on you. Oh, Trustee Hollander first.
I just looked up the census data for Riverwoods because we're talking about how many kids and what's changed. One of the advantages that being at home, you can do this on your computer. The households with children has gone up 7%, and the households without children has gone down 8%. Not sure why the two don't match. So it looks like the impression of having more kids in the family in the area is accurate, whatever that influences anyone.
Okay, I think Kate Levinson, a resident, I believe you raised your hand.
Yeah, hi, I'm Kate. It's nice to meet you guys. Thank you so much for talking about this. I started the petition because I didn't really know any other way to start looking at, mustering up some support. I have a 3-year-old who's a ticking time bomb actually over in the corner here. And as I've noticed my neighborhood, I've been here since now 2018, I moved in, and there's a ton of kids. I mean, it's just like every house that sells kids move in, the kids are playing together in the streets, the kids are going out and hanging out together. And the idea of having a playground to me is a community building opportunity. My kid's not of school age yet. I don't know a lot of the other moms. I don't know a lot of other parents. Like the idea of being able to go to a playground in my community, in my town, and, meet other parents and give the children the opportunity to play together. I think we all live in Riverwoods because it is in the woods and because we have these big, beautiful properties. Right. And then now we've gone and I also think there's a lot of opportunity for not only the kids, but also the adults to connect and meet with one another at this playground or at Village Hall, with all the infrastructure that's being created there in general. And here we've gone and created a parking lot next to the Village Hall. And like, if we weren't going to put a playground there, then we should have planted trees, like now we have the parking lot. We have the paths. Let's make the investment in upkeeping those paths, creating this playground, creating an environment around Village Hall for us to all come together at and for our children to thrive and play at. I just think it's so, important. And yeah, and I know I have a couple other parents who I know have hopped on this meeting too, just to voice their support, and I didn't go out of my way too much, but Rick, I feel like maybe stole my thunder a little bit. He touched on a lot of my points. But yeah, I'd really love to see a place where the Riverwoods kids can come together. And, like he said, we have to drive no matter what to get to the playground. And we already have a parking lot. Let's build a new park. Manette, would you like to talk about wanting to build a new park? Can you address the board? No, she says no, thanks.
Well, thank you very much. Is there anyone else that wishes to address the board? Laura, you've yeah, would you like to address the board? Unmute yourself, please. There we go. Hope you're muted again. Okay.
No, thanks for listening. I tend to have a different view than Kate. And I actually think that a lot of things that Mr. Haber was saying earlier make a lot of sense to me. Number one is when you have a playground, you have to take care of it, and it's not cheap. And I think from being at a local school, the amount they had to pay on insurance wasn't cheap either. And you have to realize if anything happens, the village is then responsible if it's on their grounds. So that's one thing. The other thing, and my kids are getting older now, but they're, when we looked at this, I don't know how many years ago, there is a park within half a mile of where everybody lives. Now, does it build a sense of community? No, but it doesn't call out for that. There's a ton of parks that there are not a ton of parks around here. There's a lot of parks to go to. And a lot of the parks get people when they have places for softball games and soccer games and baseball games and family gatherings. And I think one of the things that I don't want to see is if we're not swimming in cash as a village, why are we going out and building something new when some past things really haven't turned into big usage items? As a resident, I step back and go, what were we thinking? And why are we doing some of these things? From a standpoint of safety, I agree. The only way to get there is by driving. And, there's so many different parts of Riverwoods. And I think one of my neighbors had mentioned the last time we were discussing this is if anyone has been around the village hall or where we live, which is behind the village hall, if you try to go out in the summertime, people are covered in mosquito netting because the mosquitoes are so bad. So if you think you can get there and be with your kids, and even bug spray doesn't work. The mosquitoes are just that bad because we have so many trees back here. So I wanted to bring that up, as well as, let's see what else. I think this idea of keeping things kept up. This is not something that you can get behind on. And I don't have a lot of comfort right now, having been one of the people who has fallen on her bike on the path between Port Wine and Saunders Road, or Riverwoods Road, whatever that is. I am lucky enough to have found all the guts in the little holes in there. And, I'd like us to at least prioritize what we're going to do and do things in different sections. But I necessarily don't think that, the village hall is a place to maybe do this. Can we change the rules in Thorngate as for something that's already there? So that's what I have.
Thank you for your comments.
Mhm.
Thank you very much. Trustee Jamerson?
If there's nobody else from the public, I would just like to clarify a couple of things. First of all, I know I live in a corner of the village, but a half a mile from my house to the east is Port Wine Road. A half a mile to the north of my house is Deerfield Road. There is no park anywhere within a half a mile of my house. The Thorngate Park is at best a mile and a half, and this is small things, but your facts are incorrect. And I also believe, and Bruce can tell me if I'm wrong here, I'm not sure about how much the village can be held liable for things that happen there. Bruce Huvard?
The village has a lot of property already. We have potential exposure already. Our insurance carrier did not tell us don't have a park or playground because you might get sued. We're a village and we have public areas already. We'll address the liability concerns with appropriate insurance. We benefit from the Tort Immunity Act. So, if you told me you were going to build a 100-foot climbing wall, or something which is a known high-risk activity, we might be having a different discussion. But you see parks and playgrounds from governmental bodies all around. They must be there for a reason, and so I'm sure we can address the risk. One of the requirements is that we have some periodic maintenance. I've talked about that with the mayor. But we do everything we can in the conception and the design and how we go about planning for it. And we try and, if the board wants to go forward, you try and come up with something that has manageable maintenance for the village, or that we understand how to have that handled on a periodic basis, like other governmental bodies do. So it's not an insurmountable obstacle. It's just something we have to manage.
So, and just one more thing. I'm not in favor of running out tomorrow and spending $200,000 or $300,000 or $100,000 on a play lot. I don't think we should jump into it. I think we need to figure out what it is that the people that want it want, and if there's a huge group of people that doesn't want it, then we have to take that in consideration as well. But I think that we should move forward with something. I'm not saying we should necessarily spend a ton of money right this instant tomorrow. But I don't know if that means focus groups for the people that would like it, or if we need to get more. To Trustee Clayton's point, we've surveyed and asked and to like crazy, and we've gotten a mixed review. So I don't know where the next thing to go is, but I do think we should move somewhere to see what people want. Obviously, there's people that want it. And I know there's people that don't want it. But I think we have to do something, and So I don't know what the
Yeah.
next thing is, Mayor, but that's up to you.
There was a member of the public that's just has opened her video. Are you wishing to speak, Marianne? Did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I wanted to make a comment. I'm new to the area. We just moved in within the last year. But I have 2 young kids, and I think a park would be a great addition to the community. We moved into the area because it has great access to the river trail and great outdoor space. But I think it is lacking a park. I mean, we don't have a park that's close by. We have to drive to somewhere. We go to Buffalo Grove, which is unfortunate, that we should be able to go somewhere within our own community. And having the young families is one of the reasons, why we like the area and why we want to stay. So I am in favor of getting a park. I think it would be very important to an important part of an addition to the community. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. At this point, if I'm getting the right feel from the trustees, that there is support for moving forward to look at a park. We have certain not requirements, but interests that we want to have taken care of. We want to make sure that we're taking care of what we have first, and that would be the pathways, and we're going to address that. We'll address that with the board very shortly. But if we're all of a mind to move forward with this, then it's the process to move forward. And it seems like the board might want something more specific to react to. Trustee Haber.
I think we should be careful when we talk about this, and we should not be using the term park. Because I think if you use the term park, that engenders in everyone's mind something completely different than I think what we are even talking about here tonight. We're talking about adding a children's playground to our already existing campus plan. So I think if we're going to get a true read from the village residents, if we're going to go out and somehow survey them in some fashion, I'm not sure how that's going to be done, but if you're going to get a true read from them, we have to be very careful on what we say, because if we say park, people are going to think, oh, is that going to be fields for recreational games? Going to be
Right.
water fountains? It's going to be, I think we really need to be careful. So I just want to caution. I don't know if everyone else agrees with me or not. Maybe people do want to park in the true sense of a word, but I think we really should be careful on that.
Perhaps the term we should be using is play area. If that makes more sense. Good. I saw 2 thumbs up. Yeah. For a play area. I'm going to interrupt 1 minute. We have another comment from our resident. And your name, I'm sorry, JK.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Kranitz.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm
Thank sorry, can you spell your last name, please?
Sure. Kranitz, Kranitz. I have 2 young kids. We're new to Riverwoods as well. And I love that distinction that you just made. I'm certainly pro park. My family gets in the car a lot to go to Deerfield. I would love to go even closer. We live in the Woodland Lane sort of community, for lack of a better term. So there's definitely nothing within walking distance. And yeah, it would be great for my family. I support the idea, but I also love the comment that was just made about distinguishing it from a play area and a park. And there's a lot of really interesting ideas. In the city, there's Garfield Park Conservatory, which has a really natural driven play area for kids. And it's just all these wooded elements, things that kids can build with. I remember when my kids were little, I watched a documentary on how important free play in nature is. So just to set the tone, maybe it's a play area. Maybe there's something very different and very special about what Riverwoods could bring. And it could be representative of the things that we probably all love about this community, which is nature and kind of open space. And anyway, I think that certainly caught my attention, and I think I'd be willing to do some research and find the documentaries and the studies that support some of these ideas if that's of interest, just putting that out there.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Trustee Haber, did you have a comment? Oh, these screens light up, you know. Trustee Hollander.
There is money floating around for most of the governmental entities in the last couple of years. I'd at least like to, I think we have a consultant who looks for that. It may be worthwhile to see if there's some way that we can look at something where there is some shared funding for this type of purpose or something similar to this, as long as we're going to look into it.
Trustee Clayton.
In addition to looking for grants, I've been trying to promote the idea that we should go to some of our corporate partners in Riverwoods and see if we can't get donations to help with the construction of the play area, first of all. And second of all, I'm sorry, I don't remember JK's name. I just see the banana phone on the screen. But at this point, that's exactly what I would be in favor of, a nature play oriented area. And we're kind of batting around different ideas for what might be proposed. And that is clearly already one of them.
Yeah, exactly. Another resident has opened her video screen, Randy Merrill. Randy, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, and actually just what was just said prior is could we look at something like Discover and make it a Discover playground and have them do some sponsoring, right? You know, something like Horizon is doing so much great stuff around here that, you know, co-sponsorship or even just, you know, look again, branding.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Again, I'm back to if I polled the board right now, I feel like I'm getting agreement to move forward and continue with the play area. Can I see a thumbs up or down, please?
I just wanted to add a comment.
Oh, Trustee Dickon, yes.
Yes, I'm all for continuing the discussion, but I just wanted to make sure that we do have some data that demonstrates the residents' opinions. You're naturally, anytime you do a survey, you're naturally going to have a lot of people who are very strongly for it and a lot of people who are very strongly against it. Anyone who doesn't really care is probably not going to voice their opinion, but I think it'd be interesting to see how the community responds to this idea. I love the concept of reaching out to Discover and other potential sponsors. I love the overall concept of making it a different type of a play area, an educational and outdoors play area. I just want to make sure that there's data that supports this decision, and I'm all for continuing this discussion.
Attorney Huvard.
One of the things that the board might consider, you know, we did a lot of the survey work. Well, it's been 3.5, maybe 4 years ago, when I was working with the mayor to sort of put together the packet and trying to remember what we had done. I didn't remember what we had gone out to bid with. And since then, Trustee Clayton has come up with some other ideas. In our past experience, it's always been a little bit abstract when you say to someone, do you want something in the abstract? But if the board thinks this is a good idea, then, you know, my suggestion is that we find someone to help us come up with a design, a couple of options, 2 or 3 options that would include some of these nature play areas. We didn't, I don't know that that was exactly the focus before. And then if you're going to try and have a discussion with the public and yourselves about it, to have, you know, 2 or 3 possible designs. That's when, in my conversations with other park district officials, when last couple of weeks, just asking them how they went through the process, you know, they talked about engaging designer and having options for the board and the public to consider. And maybe that would be a way of sort of responding to some of these concerns about knowing what the public wants, but also not just asking questions in the abstract, maybe just I guess I'm wondering if we would be coming back and, possibly with a design consultant or somebody so that we could get some options before you for the next, the next part of this.
Yeah, I mean, the feeling of the board is that, I'm understanding. We've gotten guidance. I feel like we've gotten guidance to move forward. And now the question is, how do we move forward? And point well taken, it's very difficult to move forward if the board doesn't have anything specific to react against. And it's very difficult to know how to move forward or where to move forward to if you don't have any options in front of you. The original bid and that came with it had more of a traditional type play area. And you've seen those things. They used a picture actually in the petition. That was part of the original bid package. So that's more traditional. We tried to give you a feel for, and it's not exactly right, but in the board materials, we included a similar type drawing of the kinds of things that GRG Playscapes would offer. It's not what they would offer us, but it's a general feel for the kinds of things that they would bring forward. So they are two different approaches to a play area. So what we do need to do is get a sense of which direction. So I think maybe if our committee can then come forward, work out, again, I brought this to the board because the next steps definitely involve bringing something to the board for expenditure. It's either going to be for a landscape designer to do what we've done before, or it would be a recommendation for a specific play design and play provider. We have been advised, as I said in the memo, we've been advised to work with a professional, a landscape professional who is familiar with how these things get built according to certain standards that have been recommended that we follow by our insurance company, and that has experience in these ways. What we could do is we could review the existing design and simply rebid the project. The design is out there. Gewalt Hamilton could review that design and we could go out for a couple of bids that way too. So I don't know that we've got enough specificity in front of the board at this point in time, but those are potential directions. Is there any reaction to what I've just said by the trustees? Trustee Jamerson, please.
Well, I don't think it makes sense to go out for rebid on the previous plan.
Okay.
I think that there's other ideas out there that maybe we want to look at that may be less expensive. They may be more expensive. I don't know. It might be worth getting some of the residents that voice some opinions tonight to join the committee and see what they have to say about that part of it. That might be a way to move forward. I'm not sure I would, this is me speaking, I'm not sure I would hire a consultant to put together 2 or 3 plans until we have a little bit more input from the people who would most likely be using it, in my opinion.
You know, when the designers have talked to us, like I've talked to a couple of them, they've made that very point, Rick, that, they expect to be meeting with residents before they design. That's what they're asking us, what is going to be the public participation process? They've asked us that question.
Ms. Merrill.
So could we even reach out to something like a Thornton's to help support, or any of the new, Lexington, whatever it might be coming in? Would it be nice for them to be able to sponsor it? this area?
Timing might be kind of an issue with that. I
Or
think
maybe the
that,
next project, maybe?
okay, why don't we come back with, we'll come back with a plan. I think what I'm hearing is, number one, move forward. Secondly, public participation is desired. And a format for how that public participation happens, either via committee or organization of focus groups or surveys. Does that make sense? That makes sense. Okay. Trustee Dickon.
Yes, there was a chat that I wanted to read. It came from Kate Levinson, and she says, I know we aren't allowed to use chat, but perhaps somebody can read it for me. I need to go put my daughter to bed. I'm happy to volunteer to look into some awesome ideas for design concepts.
Thank you. Is there anything else on this topic? Okay, thank you for your time, board, and thank you to people who have commented from the public. It's much appreciated. Then let's move on to old business, and there is none. So the committee reports. We'll start with legal and police. Trustee Haber.
Still trying to get a police contract. Not yet. But we have awesome police, as we know from the mayor.
We do.
Maybe those awesome police will let us have a contract soon.
Okay, communications, Trustee Dickon.
I've got a brief update related to the website. I've met with the Director of Community Services and the Building Department Coordinator. We're looking at the old, or rather current, building permit, which seems to be a very unintuitive form to be filled out online. And so we tried to kind of take a couple steps back and see if we can skin the cat a little differently. We're going to be reconvening hopefully at the end of this week to put out a whole different format, still trying to consolidate or gather the same type of information that the old permit was trying to do, but where we require the user to complete the form, and the website would not allow for the form to be submitted unless certain information is included in the application. That way the building department doesn't end up with a bunch of incomplete applications. Another thing I'm working on is what's called a links redirect project. Might be a little technical, but I'll try to kind of summarize it quickly. So what this involves is actually setting up short links specifically for frequently visited pages. So for example, right now, if I were to guide you to the building application, you would have to type in riverwoods.gov/building/web form/building permit application. Instead, we would have an alternative that says riverwoods.gov/building permit. And it's a very brief, short URL that we can advertise on, the village sign, on our printed materials, on, anywhere where we need to make a very brief and concise URL. All of these links will also appear on the printed versions of the applications. And this doesn't only relate to applications. This could be, anything. This could be riverwoods.gov/plant sale or riverwoods.gov cleanup day. So we have the ability to create these very brief, clean, intuitive URLs, and I think we should just take advantage of the tool that's available to us. And last but not least, I'm hoping that we'll be able to get a meeting date on our calendar with Carissa Smith, our new village engineer, to go over a number of engineering related items on the website that Pat Glenn and I had on our to-do list, but unfortunately never got around to finalizing. And that's all I've got.
Are there any questions for Trustee Dickon? Okay, moving on, building, utilities, stormwater. Oh, I'm sorry, Trustee Haber, unmute. Yeah, okay.
So Lilia, we see now all the time these, I don't forget what they're called, these codes where you just take a picture of the code.
The QR codes, yes,
Yeah.
that's next on my agenda, where you'll just scan it with your phone. Yes.
Okay, so I was just hoping that maybe we can get to that point so that we can drive maybe more traffic to the
That's
Riverwoods
coming.
website.
I didn't want to get too fancy until we get to the quick URLs first. But
Thank
once
you.
we get those quick URLs, it will be easier to generate the QR codes.
Okay.
You're,
thank
you're thinking in the very right direction. Thank you for being very progressive.
Are there any other questions for trustee Dickon? Okay, moving on, building and department, trustee Jamerson, please.
So this is not my report, but I'm just going to hop on to what trustee Haber said. What we're going to do, trustee Haber, is we're going to put the QR code on the sign at the corner so that when people go by, they can take their phone and, just kidding. The building reports in the packet. The construction value year to date is over double what it was last year. The permit fees are up again. I think we're going to have a very busy year in the building department. Russ is nodding his head. And that's without Lexington or Thornton's. So it's going to be a busy year. So that's the good news. And most of it's residential. There's very little commercial seems to be happening right now. So that's a good thing. The other thing, I was shocked the other day when somebody forwarded me a stormwater question. So it's the first question I've had, and I was out of town and Russ handled it. So, and I think that's been pushed over to Carissa and Gilwald Hamilton to look at, or if it hasn't, you will be getting it soon. A resident's got an issue with some drainage problems on a public street. So anyways, that's all I have.
Any questions for trustee Jamerson? Woodlands and ecology, trustee Eastman.
The only thing I would mention is we've made a little bit of progress on the village hall use policy. The mayor and I had a discussion about that, and I've got some good examples now from the Deerfield Park District as to how they actually write out their use policy. So hopefully I can incorporate some of their language where it makes sense, and we can get something before the board shortly.
Thank you. Are there any questions for trustee Eastman? Trustee Hollander.
I was going to bring this up under comments for the board. This seems more appropriate. We have a cost share program for a number of different programs that one can do as a resident. And I was thinking that maybe we ought to, as a board, review that and renew it maybe every 3 years. The cost is significant, and the tens of thousands of dollars that the village puts out. And I think it's a great program. I would support it almost no matter what it costs. But I think these things ought to sunset. And I think the board should, whether it's every 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years, ought to renew the program and review what the costs have been. And so that falls under the ecology. And I'm making a recommendation that we consider reviewing these programs on a regular basis and reapprove them or modify the dollar amount or whatever it may be.
Seems prudent to me.
So noted. Thank you. And on the ecology, I did pass along the board's interest in having a state of the woodlands kind of review, an annual one. And so maybe that will happen next, our next meeting. Just an FYI. Land use and roads, trustee Hollander.
Yeah, there's a 2-page attachment to the board notes here. I had a couple of very active residents who represents a significant part of the village interest, question whether or not the village should continue to support a multi-use path along Deerfield Road, or whether we should take a position against what the county wants to do. We have discussed this in the past, and I wanted to try to bring it to the board, and it's a fairly independent way of looking at it. So I added some background to it. Certainly from the Lake County's viewpoint, this is a priority for them. They've made it very clear in a number of communications that this is something they want to add to all their new projects. And it's been funded and approved by the county. As a board, we have reviewed this several times, although under different looks of a multi-use path, where it was a little bit smaller in the location, but the board has taken multiple views of this and approved it each time. And that's all in this note to everyone. So my question is, and Bruce Uvard also did a background that's been going on now for over 10 years as to the village's positive desire to have this. The question was whether or not the amount of trees and destruction of the landscaping was worth the width of the multi-use path. And I thought that I would at least present it to the board and see if our feelings are the same as they have been in the past, or whether you want to re-explore this.
Trustee Clayton.
Just to actually put some data to the tree issue. I'm reading from the county's data now. The county says they're going to cut down, as part of the Deerfield Road project, 1,125 trees. Now, some of those are not high quality trees. So let's look at the trees that are greater than 12 inches in diameter and that are considered highly desirable. And they're going to cut down 242 trees. Of the 242, 73% are associated with the multi-use path. I think we have new information now that changes some of the past considerations that the board has given to the pathway. And I would like to request that we actually set aside some time to discuss the whole project and the village's stance on the whole project at this particular point, given the amount of environmental impact from the project and also the changes in traffic patterns that have happened post-COVID, so that we can kind of air out all of the different opinions and considerations that need to be done in an orderly way and decide what the village's position should be.
Chairman Brightcott.
I'd also like to add that in the county's environmental assessment, they represent that the village has approved a separated multi-use path that was in response to an RPC question, public comments about the number of trees that would be cut down and whether the village had actually approved that concept of the plan. So you should know that the county is representing that the village has made a certain decision, which I'm not sure it has.
Trustee Haber.
So my recollection is that when the trustees thought through this whole concept, we obviously had an issue, or we had a consideration about protecting the residents along Deerfield Road that would be mostly impacted by the removal of the trees. And at that point in time, we set aside and budgeted, I think, pretty close to $250,000. Yeah, like 200 or maybe a little bit more, $200,000 to actually replant or assist homeowners in replanting some of these lost trees. I don't remember if it was a 50-50 basis or what it was exactly, but I know there was some concession. I just don't recall the specifics of it. So I don't know that there has been that much that has changed since the board has gone through this multiple times. I mean, we've done this at least 3 times that I can recall. And the existence of the path, I think, is really consistent with this whole climate control or climate, issues, because we're talking about promoting walking and biking and not things that are more carbon neutral. So I for one think that you can revisit things ad nauseum because there's always going to be little nuances that are going to change over time, but I don't think that there's anything that's been marginally different now. We knew at the time that we addressed this in the past that there were going to be hundreds of trees that were going to be removed, and we had made the determination that that's why we wanted to come up with something to help the residents along Deerfield Road. So I don't know that I'm really prepared to relook at this unless I see something that is really a concrete change. And I also would question Trustee Hollander, I'm just curious as to, you said some residents have been bringing this up to you. Are these residents who are along Deerfield Road who are mostly impacted by this?
It was the two residents that were most interested were the head of the RPC and the head of the Plan Commission.
Right.
And they have been very active in promoting a viewpoint on the Deerfield Road, which I think represents a legitimate way of looking at it. I do want to present to the board, though, that as much as we may want to reconsider it, it was the legal opinion on our ability to modify what the county wants to do. And because we had discussed this at length, taking a position opposite from the county, our chances of winning were going to be very, very small. We had brought up the idea where this was done on Route 22, and they fought it, and they just did what they wanted to do. And we thought we would get a better benefit from the county by working with them and trying to modify what they were trying to do. So from a practical standpoint, I must tell you that my opinion, Bruce may want to chime in, the chances of our successfully preventing them from putting a multi-use path, I think, is small. It doesn't mean we shouldn't necessarily try if that's what the village or the board wants, but I think that's a realistic opinion.
Trustee Jamerson, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. To the point of whether the board, first of all, I agree with what Trustee Haber said, almost 100%, which you can put that somewhere in the minutes. Almost 100%.
I want to date and time this. Go ahead,
100%.
please.
But the 2 pages that were added to at the end of the packet, it shows that the village approved that this path was going to go in. So for the county to be representing that, it seems to be true based on what's here. So I'm not sure we have anything to go against there. And I do think that Henry is correct that, we have a very little chance of getting them to alter this, especially at the point where, and I don't know exactly where they're at. Carissa might be able to help us with that. But I think they've done engineering drawings. They've put a lot of money towards this path, and to have them re-engineer it now would be a significant cost that it wouldn't surprise me if they came back and asked us to pay for. So not that we would, but.
Well, bear in mind that paths have to be, to be federally funded, they have to be at least 8 feet in width. So I don't think there's a way to re-engineer the path. I think if you ask them to reconsider, I think you'd decide not to build the path.
But even that, Bruce, is going to cause them to re-engineer the whole project with stormwater detention and retention and everything else. I mean, they're not going to build the same project if they take that path out. So they're going to have to re-engineer it. They may have to reapply to the federal government for funds. I think you're going to get a ton of pushback from the county.
Right. And
Chairman Brightcoff, you had a
yeah, I'd like to add that there are residents living along Deerfield Road who are against the multi-use path. So it's not just the 2 people mentioned.
I think we lost Trustee Eastman. Otherwise, I would ask him to weigh in. Yep, he's gone. Are there any other comments from the trustees? It sounds like Trustee Clayton.
It should be no surprise that I disagree with just about everything that Trustee Haber said. So we're at least consistent. I don't believe that this is an issue on the margin. nor do I believe that we have a limited probability of success. There have been a number of projects in Lake County that have not gone forward because of environmental consequences. When 22 was put in and Willow Road was put in and all those, they did not have this degree of environmental consequence. And I think that it's imperative that we at least do a thorough job of considering what our options are. And sorry if people believe that we've discussed this ad nauseum, but I think this is the most important ecological event in the village's history. And I think it's something that we should take the time to debate and discuss in an orderly way. And this is not the right format for doing that at the end, at the end of the meeting. So I would again like to ask that we have some kind of committee of the whole or other kind of format that allows us to have a conversation about this in a way that we can come to a conclusion that we're all comfortable with, or at least the majority is comfortable with.
Trustee Haber.
So I just want to point out that that the village did a bike path study years ago at a considerable expense. And that bike path study, the result of that bike path study was that there was a direct need for paths along Deerfield Road. And there was I don't know if it was a majority or whatever, but there seemed to have been, at least anecdotally, an outcry that we needed to have paths along Deerfield Road to get over to the bridge and to get to the high school. And that was kind of like one of the impetuses for this extension of the path west of Port Wine. So we've debated this and discussed that. Okay, we've already had the debate and we've already had that discussion more than once. And then the issue of the expansion of Deerfield Road came up, and the board debated and discussed that issue. And we debated and discussed the issue of the environmental impact. Okay, so I take exception with the concept that we have not had a debate and discussion about this. We have. This is a revisiting of those same discussions that we had. And this happens very often now on this board. And I just question it. Certainly things change. And when data changes, maybe we have to look at things again. But I'm not hearing anything that says that data has changed. We knew about the loss of the trees last time. We knew that it had to be an 8-foot path last time. We knew that when we agreed and spent the money for the phase 1 engineering that the village paid for 100% on our own, okay? We paid for phase 1 engineering on this. Phase 2 was paid by the county, okay? This was thoroughly debated and thoroughly discussed. There is not anything new except that two people, one organization and one individual has come to the board and has said, we want to talk about this again. That's not an appropriate way of running this. I'm sorry. If there's new data, it's appropriate, but there's no new data here. So I take exception to the comment that we have to debate and discuss this. It's really, we have to debate and discuss this a third time or a fourth time because we don't like the result the first time. And that's not appropriate.
Asking for something to be put on the agenda is always appropriate, in my opinion, number one. Number two, you did not know the extent of the tree destruction when you debated this the
That
last
is
time.
not true. We did
That
know
is absolutely true if you go back and look at the minutes and the data. So we have new data, and we have new data about the climate and the impact of climate change. And there is no way that a pathway is less carbon, a smaller carbon footprint than cutting down 272
And
some
not
odd
replanting
trees.
any, are you replanting trees there?
these trees take hundreds of years to grow. Planting new
Right.
trees.
And we're gonna, and
is-
hopefully the earth will be here for hundreds of years. And maybe not be in our lifetime, but it'll be in next generation's lifetime.
At the
We
rate
have to
we're
think
going,
about
the
that.
earth will not be here in 100 years. And that's the whole point. And if you're too, I don't understand the reluctance to at least have a conversation about it at this particular point. But if that's the opinion of the board, that we have already debated this and discussed it, I certainly don't want to violate anybody's concept of, well, we keep revisiting things and we keep revisiting things and we keep revisiting things based on two people's input. So if the board doesn't want to discuss it, then we'll just have to try to fight the project on our own.
Trustee Jamerson.
I'm not going to get in between the two Michaels on the board, but I would just like to say that I think it's every trustee's right as a trustee to request something to be put on the board agenda. So, as much as somebody may or may not want to talk about it again, if a trustee asks for something to be put on the agenda, I think it's the mayor's responsibility to put it on the agenda. So that's all I have to say. Because I think that if you say that this can't be put on the agenda, but something else can be, I think that you're going down a slippery slope.
Would it be helpful to have information from the Illinois EPA about their review? Trustee Hollander.
The purpose of this was to find out whether or not the board wanted to discuss this on the agenda. And I think that it might be helpful to get a vote of the board to see, do you want to have a discussion as an agenda item or not? Rather than starting something we may not need to. I promised I would bring it up and not take a position. I'm trying to be an independent observer of this. And I think that if there's a feeling by the board that we've discussed it, we ought to at least say that as a board. And if there's a feeling that we ought to rediscuss it, then it should go on as an agenda item.
Chairman Brightcott.
And my point was that the county is representing something, and it was my question whether or not that is what the village agreed to. If that's what the village agreed to, i.e. that it approved a bike plan, multi-use path, then that's the way it is. But I don't think the village should just be lying down and taking what the county says as what the village approved if it did not approve it. So if the village did approve it, okay, fine, that's what the village approved. When I was reviewing it, I was looking at making public comments. So I just think the record should be correct, whatever the answer is.
Maybe Bruce can comment on whether the village.
Yeah.
The village funded the original study when the path was going in before there was a road widening project. When it became apparent to the county's view that they wanted to widen Deerfield Road, they had to redo the project, what they had planned before. So in effect, they redid the phase one. The phase one we did wasn't the phase one they ended up using because I believe that I think I have this right, and here's where I missed Pat, but they had a new project. At that point, we talked to them about, we still wanted the bike path, the multi-use path. Where would it fit in? But we were also now really concerned about the road widening. So we spent some time with them negotiating over our concerns about the road, and it led to the memorandum of understanding, which is in the board packet, and that was approved by the board, and I think the mayor has found an executed copy. And the concept was that they would be solicitous of our concerns over the roadway portion. They would plan the bike path and build it. We wouldn't have to fund it. There wouldn't be any local share, but in return, we agreed that we would try and assist with any special impact to our residents in terms of landscaping and screening. And following that, we did pass that resolution of the board that the county asked us for to pass. And I think we did deliver that to them offering to provide support of up to 250,000 to our residents who are affected by the bike path. So, from my standpoint, when I look back at the documents, it's the village did commission the bike study, and the master bike plan has been part of the comprehensive plan of the village, showing that path since 2006. It's been repeated in the 2011 plan. It was again included in the plan we just did in 2019. So if the comprehensive plan is supposed to represent what the village has conceived of as its vision and what it's authorized, and the comprehensive plan itself as a document says that the village should have a path along Deerfield Road. Now that's a path, that's not necessarily this particular path, but I think even in that report, there's discussion of what the necessary widths and so forth are for our safe multi-use path. I think we've assumed it was going to be 8 feet for quite a while. We did explore with the county at one point whether we could have bike shoulders on Deerfield Road. I think we did explore a number of things, but Lori, to answer your question, my reading of the various documents is that the village did come out with support for the idea of a multi-use path by saying we will help facilitate it by doing these things to ease the concerns of our residents. And I don't think the village board would have done that if it was opposed to the path. The decision of the path was made though before the road was ever widened. I mean, and then after the road came in, there was a different set of trade-offs that the village was trying to win from the county. But the support for the path came in before the road decision was ever made.
So I'm going to ask, is it the wish of the trustees to have this as a separate agenda item in a future meeting? And if trustee Clayton, did you have something to say?
I would just like to withdraw my request.
Okay. All right. Then I think.
I would still like to say that if a trustee asks for something to put on the agenda, it should be put on the agenda, whether the rest of the board wants it on there or not. So.
Okay.
Saying I want this on the agenda, I'm just saying, I don't think that asking the board if another trustee's agenda item should be on the agenda I don't think that's reasonable, and it may not be legal.
Okay.
I agree with Rick on that issue,
Okay.
but I also want to say one thing. Let me give you a hypothetical, Rick. Something's on the agenda and we have a vote and it passes. And the next meeting, someone says, I want to put up on the agenda, I want to revisit that issue. Is that an appropriate agenda item? Should it be put on the agenda? At some point, if something's decided, it loses the ability to go back on the agenda, at least until facts change. I totally agree with your concept. Every single trustee, that's why we're here. We bring before the board issues that we need to bring forward. But it has to be based upon some change of circumstances. And we have to also support that which we've already agreed to. If we've made a commitment to the county, we should live up to our commitments. That's all I'm saying.
I get it.
Hollander.
That's the end of my report. I promised that I would bring this up for discussion, and I knew it would be difficult, but that's the end of my report. The board can do with it as they wish.
Real quick, if I don't mind interjecting, I know the question was where
Yeah, I was trying to get to you. Thank you.
No, that's totally fine. So they have gone through their phase one, which created that EAS, so the environmental assessment report, and they are just getting into phase two, which actually is design. So when they're doing their environmental, they kind of just take a swatch of the potential impact. They don't have that finalized yet. So I would assume that the county would come back to the village and supply us plans, just like Public Works is doing with the Saunders Road sanitary improvements, and let the village kind of decompress and get review the plans and really see if it's beneficial. Because for your design one, they haven't looked at grading, they haven't really looked at drainage as a whole. So that whole pathway can completely shift if it's not feasible, grading doesn't really allow, or it's not cost, benefit. So I just wanted to put out there, they're currently moving into phase 2. They have to start then getting their easements, which is them getting agreements with private homeowners for any potential land that they need to absorb. And they can't even start design until that's done with. So there's still you're still a couple years away from any machinery showing up on Deerfield. So I just wanted to give that background. I know one of the trustees asked about where that currently sits. I just wanted to inform everyone exactly what the information we have received, or at least what I have seen.
So the chances of them, the latest pushback schedule I heard was they were going to start utility relocations in 2023. Is that right, Henry?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Also, they have committed to working with Steve Zimmerman, assuming he's still with us, on the trees and moving the pathway slightly depending on what trees were involved and how to protect them and stuff like that. They have committed to working with us very closely on that subject. Now, whether or not that has any practical effect, again, I don't know.
Any other questions, comments? Wish to discuss this topic? Finance and Economic Development, Trustee Clayton.
No report.
No reason to go into executive session either.
Move to adjourn.
You missed the
Second.
last comments from the board. Okay, fine. The next meeting, by the way, still falls under the ability to have a remote meeting. So there's a serious wish on the part of many to resume in-person meetings. And we are working very, very diligently in order to make that happen in terms of recording ability and so forth. So I think we'll poll the trustees again as we get closer. If we're ready to go live with the recording, I think we might just reconsider the in-person. So just an FYI, it's not a for certain remote next time. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second it again.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I miss that? Roll call, please.
Trustee Clayton,
Aye.
Trustee Dickon,
Aye.
Trustee Eastman, Trustee Haber,
Aye.
Trustee Hollander,
Aye.
Trustee Jamerson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you again.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Good night.